Hazard identification is back, but this time it's different, and it's round-ish. Hazard identification has been one of the foundations of health and safety management, well, since forever, really. The first hominids can attribute some of their success to being able to spot things that want to eat us, or the plants that caveman oak made into a nice salad just before he dropped down dead. We have, since the dawn of time, sought to avoid things that negatively impact our ability to carry on breathing. Well, at least as many as we can with the knowledge that we have and the skills that we've learned.
Just stay alive, no matter what occurs. I will find you.
This ability has led to evolve specific responses to threats which are designed to protect us from the dangers of the world around us, or more specifically, used to surround us. Modern life has introduced a whole new set of hazards that evolved way quicker than we have. And to add to the fun, being a species that generally does before it thinks, we have made things even more problematic for ourselves by introducing new sets of distractions, deadlines, and invisible threats to catch ourselves and each other out.
Excuse me, sir, did you notice Chewbacca?
No, I didn't, sorry.
No, I did not.
No, I didn't notice.
Right over there.
Oh.
No, sorry.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, I didn't notice him until now.
No, I didn't.
Okay. No, I'm just getting to work, so I have to check my email before I go.
Thankfully, humans are also adaptable and able to communicate. So there's a continuous conversation between us looking for new ways to protect each other and from ourselves, and to think what we can create to cause us harm next. Recently, the concept of energy-based safety has gained traction. So let's have a look at it, where it comes from, what it is, and whether it's worthy of your attention. This is the Vimes Consulting Unreliable Guide to Energy-Based Safety with me, Mick Bates, upright biped and owner of a bad back. In 1954, Hugh Rodman Lavelle and Edwin Gurney Clark developed the Levels of Prevention model, which introduced the concepts of primary, secondary and tertiary prevention. This model was designed to emphasise the different stages of intervention that can be adopted to prevent or mitigate the impact of health events, disease or injuries. Basically, they considered there were 3 levels of prevention. Primary prevention, before the event, preventing the onset of a health event, which focuses on preventing it before it happens to eliminate the risk factors and to enhance protective measures. Secondary prevention, early detection and intervention, basically stopping it before it gets too dangerous, and therefore reducing the severity of the outcomes. And finally, after the event protections, which can reduce long-term effects to maintain or improve quality of life and, where possible, restore functionality after an incident.
Any ideas?
7 so far.
The wannabe Sherlock Holmes amongst you may notice that these ideas also could be renamed Anticipate, Mitigate and Respond. Terms familiar with anybody with knowledge of resilience engineering and what has been labelled the new view of health and safety, which is an odd title for ideas from the 1950s. In a paper by James J. Gibson in the 1950s titled, with the usual artistic flourish of such documents, The Contribution of Experimental Psychology to the Formulation of the Problem of Safety, a basic brief for research. Gibson was possibly the first to link injuries with the transmission and exchange of mechanical, thermal, radiant, chemical or electrical energy. Dr. Haddon then took up this work. He was born in 1926 in New Jersey and received his education at MIT and Harvard Medical School. The foundational work of Gibson, Lavelle and Clark, along with influences from the fields of physics and epidemiology, led Haddon to develop the energy release theory, which introduced the concept that all injuries result from uncontrolled energy transfer. His theory emphasised that if we could control energy transfer, then injuries could be prevented or reduced. Haddon combined engineering, public health and behavioural science principles and created a system-orientated strategy to injury prevention. Haddon became the first administrator of the National Traffic Safety Agency and the National Highway Safety Agency in 1966, and was instrumental in creating the first federal vehicle safety standards. 1970 saw the creation of the Haddon Matrix, which was developed for road safety. The approach of assessing pre-event, event and post-event phases while considering human, physical, resource and environmental elements should be familiar to anyone working in risk mitigation to this day. While working in Alaska's North Slope oil fields, a chap called Michael Fleming noticed that workers failed to consistently recognise hazardous energy sources. This observation motivated Mr. Fleming to develop the first program specifically designed around the principles outlined in the work of William Haddon. I can't find any reference to whether those before him influenced Mr. Fleming's work or whether it was developed separately. Still, either way, the energy as a hazard basis of identification appears to have been in use since at least the 1960s. Fleming was just the first to make it into a model based around a set of standard icons. This was packaged up into a program recognising 8 different types of energy sources that became known as HRP. The Hazard Recognition Plus program, or HRP, was introduced in 1995 and is built around a structured approach to energy-based hazard identification. The energy wheel was born. Although in this particular case it's an octagon, so probably isn't the best model to copy if you're designing actual wheels. This octagon gave people a handy reminder of the energy sources that might be present during work, which could be used by people throughout the organisation to help hazard identification. The HRP approach seems to be for internal organisation HRP coaches to be trained. These coaches then raise awareness and implement the process in each organisational context. Full disclosure, I used to work for the current owners of the HRP process, and I'd been through the coaching program. When I went through the HRP concept, it didn't really include any specific advice on the types of controls that could be implemented to control hazard, and nor did it seem to me to be a natural fit for organisations with consistently evolving and adapting risk profiles. In my view, the principles used in the coaching approach would not be unfamiliar to those in behavioural-based safety environments. If that's a good thing or a bad thing will depend entirely on your own view of such things. From what I can find, HRP is the first recognisable energy-based hazard ID program to use an energy wheel, albeit in this case a bumpy one, as the central tool for understanding different kinds of energy-based hazards. It's worth mentioning at this point that there are signs of the energy-based model being used in practical applications which can be traced back to food safety in the 1960s. Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, or HACCP, was developed in the 1960s as a preventative approach to food safety. This is based on a systematic approach to identifying physical, chemical, biological hazards in food production processes, followed by identifying critical control points that need to be monitored to make the system safe. It's almost like food safety invented energy-based safety and critical risk management processes in one, but occupational safety was too busy putting on high visors and searching for the clipboards and compliance rulebook to notice. Apparently for years, though, it was okay to harm your staff, but make sure you don't get caught harming the public, or there will be trouble. Developed world foreign policymakers still use a similar approach when approaching conversations with dictators. Look, we don't mind you hurting your own citizens, but, please don't go next door and hurt them, otherwise we'll have to intervene. So, we are almost up to date. Energy-based safety has been revived recently due to the work of Dr. Matt Hallowell. He's a professor at the University of Colorado. His work has demonstrated through published research that workers can miss about 35% of hazards due to cognitive biases. When given the energy wheel, hazard recognition increases by up to 30%. The fact that humans miss stuff shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We're terrible at identifying hazards that we haven't come across before unless they've been ingrained in us through our evolutionary process. Spiders, snakes. And so it makes sense to help us out and by giving us some clues. Is being able to spot hazards the same as being able to manage risk, though? Dr. Halliwell's work has also included established insights into the amount of energy which can cause harm. This, in theory, gives us clues to which type of hazards we should focus on, which controls might work better than others, and in general provide us the best protection from harm. But the real question is, does the energy-based safety approach make workplaces safer? The research suggests that identifying hazards effectively and applying robust controls to protect people from harm is a good thing. That's no surprise.
This feels like a good place to have a look at the two versions of energy-based safety that I've discussed in this video. There are other versions out there, but these two seem to be the ones currently at the forefront of discussions. HRP identifies 8 different types of energy, whereas the version created by Halliwell has 10. Does that mean HRP somehow missed 2 sources of energy in a tool that is supposed to help us identify things we would otherwise miss? Not really, no. HRP chooses to combine mechanical energy into motion, whereas the energy wheel keeps them separate. The energy wheel refers to thermal energy as temperature, while HRP uses the hot-cold tag. Mild temperatures, it would seem, are a hazard to few. Sound is included in the energy wheel, but not in HRP, where I would assume that it would be captured within pressure. However, this does seem a bit of a stretch if the purpose is to aid identification of hazards that we may otherwise miss. The Chazan's version of the model developed by Dr. Halliwell, and the one I've used here, uses the acronym STICKY in the centre, stuff that can kill you, as a reminder to focus on the high-risk hazards. HRP chooses to use eliminate, control and protect in the centre of the octagon, which you may remember from the work of Level and Clark in the 1950s that I mentioned earlier. But the concept of both is similar. You need to look out for where you have energy hazards and what will happen if that energy is released in an uncontrolled fashion. Could it cause somebody harm? In fact, I'll let Scott Brown explain the basic premise.
I don't even know if this one's a tip, but it's something that I tell myself all the time when I'm going to cut something. If I'm going to cut something like this, I always say to myself, where does the blade go if you slip? If I'm going to cut like this, if this blade's going to move, my thumb's kind of in the way. So you kind of want your hand closer to the blade, and then you move it as you go. You don't want to be right behind it and then go like that. And I know that because I have a scar right here on my thumb.
People love a shortcut. Or as I believe we must refer to all things now, a hack. So, an icon or a model makes sense to help our busy brains focus on what might or might not be out there. You think there's a but coming, don't you? Well, there isn't. Okay, maybe a small one. Okay, maybe 2 small ones. In general, the focus for this approach to hazard identification feels like it's focusing on the worker more than those who plan and design the work. All the energy-based safety programs I've seen while researching mentioned upstream risk management. Still, most of the presentations and training seem to focus on frontline workers. They use pictures of active work sites and discuss how workers miss hazards. These are the people, remember, who have generally had the least influence over the work they are being asked to do. Personally, it feels like this sort of approach should be embedded in the design and planning stages of work, not left until workers are on site and have to do a JSA. Using active worksite images to train such a program frames the concept as one that is used when hazards are already there. Yes, having a memory aid complements many processes. Still, risk assessment is, in my view, more complex than hazard spotting. Unless the capability and capacity to influence and make real change to the work or available almost immediately, frontline workers will always feel pressure to get the job done. Much better to use them as a sense check that work has been effectively designed, rather than asking them to use the equivalent of flat pack instructions to make the parts fit together. Secondly, energy-based safety is, as you would expect, focused on preventing physical harm. I'm sure you could squeeze stress under pressure, but it doesn't feel like the process is a good match for psychosocial risks present in all workplaces. Remembering that these really influence our decision-making capabilities. So much so that even the best hazard ID program will fail those being asked to use it if they don't have the cognitive capability available. So if you're looking for a single approach to hazard ID for your organisation, would I recommend this one? No. But also, I wouldn't recommend any single approach. There is no one-size-fits-all. Energy-based hazard recognition has been around for more than 60 years as far as I can see in one form or another. It's backed with published research and can help fill a void that evolution has left. The fact it's still being discussed should give you confidence that it has some validity. It's a simple concept to grasp, and anything that helps improve risk management is worth investigating. If the type of work you do can be planned and you have control over the people and the environment and those you interact with, then it's a sensible place to start. The caveat is that you should begin the hazard recognition process long before you have boots on the ground. And I suppose finally, is there one of the models that seems better than the other ones? Well, that really will depend on your own resources, capability and general organisational approach. If it was up to me and I had to implement one of these, I realised there's loads of free information out there, and free is an excellent place to start.